Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder on Weather here. We've got 2 to 3 more days of severe storms before the weather starts to settle down a little bit. Before we heat up in a big way, especially for the middle of the country, then heading into next week, all eyes will turn out west, where we do have a pretty significant trough moving in with chillier air and, yes, even some snow for some of the higher elevations. So let's take a look at the setup going forward and kind of break down the details for you. You can actually see down here to the southwest, we've just got that steady, persistent subtropical jet stream, El Nino driven type jet stream that's riding over the base, and we've got a stalled frontal boundary. We've got a sharp gradient in the temperatures. It's actually cooler on the northern side, but very warm on the southern side, and it's really right along this zone where we're seeing these little mesoscale convective systems traverse from northwest down to the southeast and shifting eastward at times, producing those big time hailstorms. We've seen that over the last couple of days, and unfortunately that same setup looks to continue at least for another 2 to 3 more days. So let's take a look at where all the hail fell yesterday. We had a massive supercell down there near Brady area that blew up to about 64,000 feet. That cloud top was massive. And this dove southeast, but it actually split. There was a splitter, and a piece of it actually shifted northeast. And that produced a long track hail core that extended all the way down from central Texas, and it moved actually in parts of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, dropping very heavy hail, and even up to softball size hail in Mansfield. And we saw sporadic hail events across a good part of the rest of Texas and a parts of Louisiana into Mississippi. Check this out, folks. There's 100 hail reports, but the most significant, there was 28 with 2-inch diameter or more. That is very damaging hail, and that's exactly what looks to unfold today and again to tomorrow. So let's take a look at the setup and what we actually have unfolding here. You can see this boundary. This is the very warm water vapor that's coming out of coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. Look at the dew points, guys. This is about 4 o'clock this afternoon. 75 degrees in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. That is some muggy air, folks. I mean, that is the culprit in the recipe to fuel these big time hail producers, especially as we get towards that 4 or 5 o'clock and peak heat into the afternoon. The atmosphere tends to turn over, and there's an uncapped atmosphere. There's not really much to stop these things once they start, and that's why they're able to tower so high, 60,000+ feet, and produce those big time hailstorms. And that's exactly what's going to unfold later on this afternoon. So if we take a look at the risk parameters from the latest update from the Storm Prediction Center, yes, they do in fact have that slight risk up there where it's originating up there in portions of the panhandle, but storms look to blow up again across the Dallas-Fort Worth area 4 or 5 o'clock this afternoon. They do have an upgraded enhanced risk for large hail, very large hail, again, tennis ball, possibly up to softball of some of those isolated reports. And it's really along this boundary from Little Rock to Shreveport to Jackson to Montgomery, down here to up into Birmingham. This whole zone on the southern and northern side of that stalled frontal boundary, that's where you have to be concerned for big time hail producers. They do have an extremely large hatched risk in place, meaning this whole area has the potential to see some of those 2-inch diameter or higher, right? Not everybody gets it, obviously, but where you do get it, it's going to do a lot of damage to your car and your house. So definitely be on high alert later on this afternoon for those big time hail producers, and heading into the evening time frame, typically around 4 o'clock to midnight is going to be the highest time frame that you have to be the most concerned of those big time hail producers. Because if you look at the latest helicity tracks, you can actually see the tracks and where they do have the SPC has that slight and enhanced risk. I mean, these are pretty high numbers, folks. That means you got some serious updrafts in this situation. You got a cold air aloft, And that's the perfect recipe with this mid-level jet stream moving across pretty far south for this time of year, fairly unusual for June standards. And definitely when you have temperatures well into the 90s, if not hundreds down over in South Texas, and those dew points surging into the 70s, that overrides that frontal boundary. And then once they form, again, they got plenty of moisture to work with, and that's the culprit of those big time supercells and large hailstones. And headed into tomorrow, you kind of have the same deal, folks. I mean, this same boundary really doesn't go anywhere. You've got this little low pressure center up here in Michigan, and then on the back side of it, you're getting underneath it, you're getting some heavier rains across portions of Illinois, back into Indiana, and as well as on Ohio. Much needed rain for those regions. But yes, further to the south, you've got to be concerned about more severe storms. Very unusual, like I mentioned, this mid-level trough here that's just draped across. I mean, look at that sharp gradient, folks. I mean, it was cold yesterday in Oklahoma City just because of that sharp gradient of where that frontal boundary lies. They were well to the northern periphery of that, but further south, I mean, there's your zone of just very large hail potential because of that mid-level jet stream that's moving across so far south for this time of year. You've got the perfect recipe, like I mentioned, with warm, very warm temperatures, from the south and overriding that frontal boundary. And there's the setup for tomorrow. So we do have yet another enhanced risk in play. This time it's highlighted more southeast, highlighted into the Jackson area, back into the Montgomery area again. That fishtails all the way out to the coastline of Charleston. But I even do feel like even for tomorrow, this actually might just get pulled back or include more of North Texas again for one more day. And this is going to be the main setup where you have to be a high alert again for those big time hail producers. And again, they've got that another hatched risk, and a fairly significant hatched risk, even a 30% hatched risk, pretty big zone within this region. So this is where you could be seeing the biggest hail for tomorrow down here in the central portions of Mississippi, heading into Alabama and portions of Georgia here. So definitely be on high alert. Again, same time frame, roughly between 4 and midnight time frame. That's where you have to be most concerned about these supercells. But look at the lightning display, folks. There's been a lot of lightning with these particular supercells. So it's going to be a high impact day. Again, not everybody gets it. It's overall about 40% coverage. I know it looks like a big zone, and if you miss it, that's great. It doesn't hit your house. It doesn't do a lot, don't do damage. But if you're underneath one of those, trust me, you have the potential to be seeing some of those big time hail events, and that could cause some significant damage to your property. So definitely be on high alert for some of those big time hailers later on this afternoon and into tomorrow. But look where the rainfall is over the next 48 hours, folks. I mean, that's look at the low pressure over Michigan, right? So if you're in the middle of that, it's dry, right? But if you're on the south side of that, you're getting some very heavy rain, and some of these could be training thunderstorms, and training produces flooding. So hey, I can't even roll out some isolated flooding in Ohio, but just because the ground has been so dry, it's going to be coming down fast and furious in some of these regions that it's not going to have time to soak in. So you could be looking at some isolated flooding, but obviously right along that boundary where that stalled frontal boundary is going to lie the next couple of days, you could also see some isolated flooding on top of those big time hail producers. So you get training thunderstorms that typically travel southeastward, and that's exactly what's going to unfold over the next 2 days. So definitely be on high alert down into those regions. But heading into Thursday, we see it shifting a little bit, right? We've got this dominant ridge of high pressure going to be building down there in Mexico, and that heat's going to be the real deal, folks, for Texas. They're about to crank up the furnace in a big way as that heat will start to overtake that stalled frontal boundary. And you can see there's not much cooler air, right? There's not a sharp gradient anymore. So with that, you have a lot lesser probability of severe storms on Thursday. than what you did on on today and Wednesday time frame. But yes, we still get some marginally induced thunderstorms into the heat of the afternoon, but nothing even remotely close as significant of what you're going to see the next 2 days. And that's exactly where the heavier rains are going to be shifting over. So I think the taps will start to shut off in Texas as the heat will overtake a good part of Texas and then shift the access for the heavier rains across portions of Southeast. And as the jet stream lifts, that's where the rain is going to be over the ridge and further north into Colorado, back into Nebraska and through the Dakotas by then on the day on Thursday. But it's all about the heat, as the heat is going to be the real deal, folks, down there in Texas, unfortunately, as a pretty significant heat wave for an extended period of time looks to unfold. So we see that low pressure center on Friday, right? That's the backdoor trough that'll be lifting further back up. And as the ridge will start to overtake that, that will help push this trough up and out of the region, while much of this ridge will start to build over the middle of the country. So right now, heading into the weekend, we have more of a zonal type flow for much of the Pacific Northwest, but that's going to change in a big way as we head into next week. So we'll walk you through the details on that parameter. But first, let's look at the precipitation going into Friday. So you can see the evident ridge draped across a good part of the Southwest and much of Texas, right? So it's sinking air by then, it's high and dry. The storm track goes up and over the ridge. So I'm not expecting any of these to be severe, but that's where the train of rain is going to be on the day on Friday as these shift over the ridge and travel southeastward over the ridge. And then as that low pressure center will be slowly shifting out of the Northeast, we still have that leftover effect with some light to moderate rains across upstate New York, back into portions of Massachusetts and Connecticut, back into Vermont and New Hampshire, and heading into Maine by then. But the heat is going to be taking over for a good part of Texas, widespread triple digits by then, and that heat will eventually start to creep back into Oklahoma, back into Kansas, back into the portions of Nebraska. It's pretty not chilly, but nice up here into the Great Lakes and up here to the Northeast. I mean, 70s and low 80s for this time of year. That's definitely going to be feeling really nice with that low pressure center still by. And this is for your Father's Day, folks. Again, widespread triple digits across Texas, and those hundreds will slowly start to build into our central states and start to overtake, with much of the middle of the country will be starting to be well above average, while things change in a big way starting out west. Compliments of this Pacific North American here goes negative, and that's going to be a pretty significant dip for this time of year. A -3 deviation. That's some cooler air, folks, for the second and third week of June by then. And so with that, if we look at heading into that following Tuesday, right? So next Tuesday, the 20th, as we head actually towards the first official day of summer, bam, I mean, it gets chilly up there in much of the West, right? I mean, with that massive dip in the P&A, that brings a fairly significant trough down in that region. And some of these areas could be looking at 20, even somewhere 25 degrees below average temperatures, while the heat is really surging by then from much of Texas and much of the southern plains. And that is well above average temperatures are going to be surging northward, extending all the way up into Canada by then. But if we look at the actual temperatures heading into the 20th time frame for the West for your morning lows, while much of Texas is baking into the 80s for low temperatures, if you want to escape the heat, you just got to head west. I mean, it's chilly up there. These are low temperatures, folks. It's going to feel not like summer. It's going to feel every bit of spring-like temperatures up there still, with widespread 40s and even 30s, and even some freezing temperatures in the higher elevations. And look at the highs, folks. Again, wow, it's just dangerous heat. I mean, numerous heat advisories are going to be unfolding by then for a good part of Texas. That ridge is just baking them. Even 116, some crazy stuff down there in South Texas. That's the real temperature. It's not even the feels like, folks. This is going to be some dangerous stuff heading into the next week. Well, look at the high temperatures out west. It's completely the opposite, right? I mean, it's fairly chilly with widespread 60s across Washington and Oregon and Nevada. And as you get to some of these higher elevations for highs, you're dropping in the 50s, you're dropping in the 40s. And if you get even higher in the elevations, you're dropping into the 30s for high temperatures. And I know what you're asking. Is it actually cold enough to snow? Well, yes, it actually is. And some of these higher elevations, we could be looking at even some snow for some of these regions heading into next week. And this would probably likely be around the Tuesday, Wednesday timeframe, heading into next week. So if you do want to escape the heat, all you have to do is head for the Pacific Northwest and much of the western regions, because it's going to be feeling really nice heading in the next week. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video. Definitely hit the subscribe button and catch me next update where I protect you for and after storm.